Welcome back to the Deep Dive, listeners. Today we're taking on a centuries-old mystery, something that baffled the brightest minds for ages, really. We're talking about the Codex Rohonczi.
Ah, the Rohonczi
Yeah,
Codex.
now imagine this. A book, hundreds of years old, filled with these captivating illustrations, but written in a language that nobody understands.
It's like a siren song, this book. It draws you in
Oh.
because it's clear that whoever created it put a lot of thought and effort into it, which I guess only adds to the mystery.
It's not just some random scribbles, right? We're
Yeah.
talking almost 500 pages. And they're filled with these unique symbols, with detailed illustrations. Like, honestly, holding it must feel like you've got a message in your hands from a lost civilization. But before we get lost in those symbols, maybe we should back up a bit. How did this book even surface in the modern world?
Well, that's part of the puzzle. The Codex's origins are totally unknown.
Completely unknown.
Yeah. The first real evidence we have is from 1838 when Count Gustav Bathiany donated it to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences.
Okay, so we've got this count, he's donating his library, and boom, this mysterious book shows up.
Pretty much, yeah. It was just part of his massive library, which he decided to give to the Academy.
So, okay, 19th century, this mysterious book appears. But is there anything that hints at its life before that? Any clues to follow?
There's one interesting lead. It's from 1743, a library catalog entry from the Bathiany family library.
Ooh, okay.
And it mentions, get this, a book of Hungarian prayers.
Hungarian prayers. Huh?
Right. And some people believe that this entry, it might be talking about the Codex.
So, could be the Codex, could be a coincidence.
Or even a red herring, right. Deliberate misdirection.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so fascinating, isn't it? It really makes you wonder.
It does, doesn't it?
Okay, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about the Codex itself. What does it actually look like? What's the physical book like?
Imagine a book a bit smaller than your average paperback, maybe about 12 by 10 centimeters. And each page, well, it's got these neat rows of these unknown symbols.
Okay, so rows of the symbols, I'm picturing that. How many rows per page are we talking?
It varies, actually, between 9 and 14 rows per page. And here's the kicker. Throughout the text, there are 87 illustrations.
Illustrations. Okay, now that's where things get really interesting for me. What kind of illustrations are we talking about here?
This is where it gets, even more fascinating. The illustrations, they show a mix of things, like religious scenes, some secular stuff, even military stuff.
Okay, so a real mix of stuff going on there. Anything specific stand out?
Yeah, well, and this is the real kicker. They seem to show Christians, pagans, and Muslims all just coexisting peacefully.
Wow, peacefully.
Yeah, there are crosses, crescents, suns, even swastikas. It's like a tapestry of cultures and beliefs, hinting at a time and place that we just don't really recognize.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, where in the world, or when in the world, could you have had such a diverse mix of people and symbols all together in one book? It's a mystery, that's for sure.
Right, and with all these symbols, obviously people have tried to decode them to translate this thing.
Of course. It's like a giant puzzle just begging to be solved. So, have there been any attempts to figure it out, to crack the code?
Absolutely. I mean, for almost 200 years, scholars have been obsessed with the Codex, trying to unlock its secrets. Some of the biggest names in linguistics, in cryptography, they've all taken a crack at it. But, so far, the Codex has held onto its secrets pretty tightly.
So all these brilliant minds, different approaches, different theories, were there any that seemed especially, promising? Or maybe just took a really unique approach?
Oh, there are a few that definitely stand out. One that always gets me is the story of Mihaly Munkaczy. He was a famous Hungarian painter.
Yeah, painter.
Right. And he was known for these huge historical paintings. But he was so intrigued by the Codex that he took it to Paris in the 1890s just to study it. Can you imagine?
So we have a renowned artist completely captivated by this book's mystery.
Exactly. But sadly, even Munkaczy, he couldn't crack the code either.
It really speaks to the power of the Codex, doesn't it? This pull it has on people. But before we get too deep into these theories about what language it might be, I think we need to address the elephant in the room, the idea that it's, not an ancient mystery at all, that it's all just a big hoax, a 19th century fabrication.
You're right. We can't ignore that possibility. There are definitely researchers who believe it's a forgery.
Okay, so a forgery. What's the thinking behind that?
They mostly point to this guy, Samuel Literati names, a Transylvanian antiquarian.
Okay.
He was known for making these incredibly detailed historical forgeries. And some people think the Codex Rohonczi, well, it could be his masterpiece.
So this cloud of doubt hanging over the Codex, even if people want to believe it's real. But what about those who do believe? Have there been any attempts at translation that, I don't know, that gave even a glimmer of understanding?
Well, there have been a few, each with its own, its own sort of captivating narrative. One that really sparked a lot of debate was the work of Attila Neri. He proposed a connection between Sumerian and Hungarian.
Sumerian and Hungarian. Okay, that's a pretty big leap.
It is, isn't it? He believed the text was like liturgical, religious in nature. He even offered a partial translation.
Oh, wow. A translation, what did it say?
It goes, "Your God has come, the Lord flies. Oh, there are holy angels, they." Oh.
Okay, evocative for sure. A flying god, angels. It definitely fits the whole mysterious vibe. But were other scholars, I don't know, were they convinced by this Sumerian-Hungarian thing?
Not really. Another researcher, Otto Gürk, he was, well, pretty critical of Neri's methods.
Okay, so not buying it. What did he think was wrong with it?
He said it was too flexible, like he could just make things fit however he wanted. And the whole idea that Hungarian comes from Sumerian, well, it's never been proven.
So back to square one. What other paths did people take to try and understand the language?
Well, this Romanian philologist, Viorca Enaciuc, she enters the scene. She claimed to have cracked the code. And she thought the language was related to, well, ancient Dacian and early Romanian.
Dacian. I'm not familiar with that one.
It's an ancient language spoken in, well, what's now Romania.
Got it. So Dacian and Romanian.
Okay.
And what secrets did this translation reveal?
According to Enaciuc, it chronicles the struggles of the Vlach people against the Cumans and Pechenegs.
The Vlach people. Remind me.
They were a Romance-speaking people in the Balkans.
Okay, right.
And her translation, it even mentions specific historical events, like a solar eclipse in 1090 AD, and geographical locations like the Dniester and Tisa rivers. It's really quite epic, if you believe it.
A lost chapter of history, wow. But I'm getting the sense there's a but coming. Did this translation hold up under scrutiny?
Unfortunately, no. Critics, they question her methods and her expertise in linguistics.
So two really interesting attempts, but ultimately flawed. It makes you wonder, are there any other avenues to explore? Were there researchers who kind of stepped back from focusing on a specific language and tried to understand the structure of the codex itself?
Well, that's where Otto Gürk comes back in, the same scholar who was critical of the Sumerian-Hungarian theory. He decided to kind of shift the focus, move away from making assumptions about the language and just, analyze the patterns of the symbols themselves.
So taking a more scientific approach. What did he find?
Well, his approach, it actually led to some pretty remarkable discoveries. Just by looking at repeating sequences of symbols, he figured out the direction of the text, right to left, top to bottom, pages turning from left to right.
So we know how to read at least.
Right. And he also identified specific symbols that seemed to work as numbers.
That's a huge step, isn't it? To be able to figure out parts of the writing system without even understanding the language.
Absolutely. His work was groundbreaking, really. It suggested that even though the codex is strange, it follows some kind of internal logic. It wasn't just, some random collection of symbols or a hoax.
So finding order within the chaos. Were there others who followed his lead, who kind of built on his analysis of the structure?
Yeah. In the 1990s, Miklos Laxmandi, he used computer analysis to go even deeper into the structure.
Oh, wow. Computers getting involved.
He confirmed Gürk's findings about the direction of the text and found what could be sentence breaks and numerical patterns. But what was interesting is he didn't find any of the usual things you'd see in Hungarian grammar.
So another blow to that Hungarian prayers theory.
Right. It's like the codex is deliberately messing with us,
Totally. Like it's throwing us off the scent. But what about the question of whether it's real or not? Did Laxmandi's work help with that?
Well, he couldn't completely rule out the possibility of a hoax, of course. But he said the level of complexity, the internal consistency of the codex, it made it very unlikely that it was just randomly created.
Okay, so even if we can't read it yet, the more we learn about how it's structured, the more we realize there's something really unique and intentional about it.
Exactly, and people kept trying to understand it. Benedict Lang, he was another scholar who offered a pretty interesting perspective. He said that, maybe instead of being a natural language, the codex was using a cipher or a calligraphy system or even an artificial language.
Wait, an artificial language? What, like, made up just for this codex?
Exactly.
That's a wild idea.
Right. It sounds like something out of science fiction. But think about it. If you wanted to hide information, making up a whole new language would be the ultimate way to do it.
It'd be like the ultimate code.
Right. And his work, well, it forced people to rethink how they approached the codex. Maybe it wasn't about matching symbols to letters, but about deciphering a whole system for encoding information, a system that nobody knew about before.
So Lang throws a real curveball into the mix. What happened next in this whole code-breaking saga?
Well, this is where the work of Gabor Tokaj and Levente Zoltan Kirali comes in. Tokaj, he started by looking at the illustrations, trying to get clues about the date and where the codex might be from.
Okay, going back to the visual evidence. Smart. What did he find?
He couldn't say for sure, of course, but his analysis suggested the codex could be older than people thought. And he said the details in the illustrations, the consistency between them and the text, it all pointed to it being genuine, a real attempt to communicate something, not just a hoax.
Okay, so another vote against the forgery theory. What about Kirali? How did he contribute?
Kirali, he really dug into the structure of the text, looking for patterns and repetitions, and he found something amazing, a 7-page section that seems to be divided into chapters.
No way. Chapters.
Yeah, numbered chapters, each with a heading, and even what looks like a table of contents.
That's incredible. In this sea of unknown symbols, we have chapters.
He also found references to the 4 Gospels, which suggests at least part of the codex might be, well, religious.
Wait, so chapters, biblical references in this book. That's huge. So did this lead to a solution? Can we finally read the thing?
This is where it gets really, really interesting.
Don't leave me hanging.
Tokaj and Kirali, they combined their expertise, and through their work together, they think they've finally cracked the code.
No way. After all this time, it's solved.
It seems so. They haven't released everything yet, but what they have shared is pretty captivating.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me, what have they discovered?
Here's the thing. They believe it's not written in any known language. It seems to be an artificial language, just like Benedict Lang had suggested.
So not just a code, a whole new language. That's mind-blowing. But if it's a constructed language, how did they even begin to figure it out?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? They haven't said exactly how they did it yet, but from what they have said, it seems they found these recurring patterns, clusters of symbols that work like words or phrases. And by comparing those clusters and looking at the illustrations, they started to piece together the meaning.
That sounds like some serious linguistic detective work. What about the content itself? What secrets has this codex been hiding all this time?
Well, this is where it gets truly fascinating. Tokaj and Kirali, they believe it's a religious text, maybe a Catholic devotional or a breviary, and they think it dates back to the 16th century.
So all this mystery, and it turns out to be a prayer book.
Well, not just any prayer book. It seems to contain paraphrased verses from the New Testament, mostly the Gospels.
So retelling familiar biblical stories. But why go through all the trouble of creating a whole new language to do that?
That's one of the most intriguing questions, isn't it? It suggests whoever made this, they weren't just trying to write these stories down, they were trying to conceal them, maybe even make them sacred to a select few who knew the code.
It's like a secret gospel, hidden in plain sight for centuries. Are there any clues about who might have created it?
Sadly, no. The Codex doesn't say who the author was. But the fact that it seems to be a 16th century Catholic text written in a made-up language, well, it really opens up the possibilities, doesn't it?
It does. Was it a monk trying to preserve these teachings during a time of, I don't know, maybe religious upheaval?
Mm-hmm.
Or a secret society protecting some kind of like esoteric knowledge?
Who knows?
The possibilities are endless.
They are.
It's incredible to think that after centuries of silence, the Codex Rohonczi is finally starting to, I don't know, to whisper its secrets. And the craziest thing is, we've only just scratched the surface. Who knows what other discoveries are waiting as people dig deeper into it?
One thing is for sure. This codex, it's earned its place as one of history's most fascinating mysteries. Even though it looks like the main code has been broken, it still makes us question what we thought we knew about language, about history, about secrets themselves. Who knows what other mysteries are hiding in its pages, just waiting to be discovered. It really makes you wonder, what if there's, I don't know, more to it than meets the eye?
Right, like what if there's a whole other layer of meaning hidden within these illustrations? Maybe they're not just decorations. What if it's a visual code or something?
It wouldn't be the first time a message has been hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
Exactly. We could be over here looking for these super complex ciphers when the answer is something totally obvious, something we've all missed because we're so focused on the, I don't know, on the obvious.
That's what's so cool about this codex. It forces us to rethink, like, what communication even is.
Yeah.
You know, why create a whole new language? What was this person trying to do?
Was it purely about secrecy? Or was there like a deeper reason, something more symbolic?
It's a good question. It really makes you think about all the ways that, well, that humans have tried to express themselves, to connect, to leave their mark on the world.
We've got everything from cave paintings to emojis,
Yeah.
right? We're always trying to find new ways to share information.
And the Codex Rohonczi, with its mix of text and these, I don't know, these almost haunting illustrations, it's this reminder that people have always been fascinated with secrets, with hiding them and with revealing them.
Okay, well that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Codex Rohonczi. It's been a journey through history, language, and the very nature of mystery itself.
A journey that shows us that even in this, in this age of information overload, there are still enigmas out there, secrets waiting to be whispered, things to be discovered.
And maybe, just maybe, one of our listeners will be the one to shed some new light on this puzzle. So until next time, keep your minds open, your curiosity piqued, and keep diving deep into the mysteries that surround us. You know, it makes you think. If you were the one who stumbled upon this book with all these strange symbols, where would you even start? It's a challenge that's, well, it's stumped people for centuries.
It has, hasn't it?
But now, with these high-resolution pictures online, who knows? Maybe one of our listeners out there. Maybe they hold the key to unlocking even more of the Codex's secrets.
That's a pretty cool thought.
Right. What if there are layers of meaning we haven't even thought of yet?
Like what?
Like maybe the illustrations themselves are a code, a hidden message, right there in plain sight. Or maybe there's something in the structure of the text itself, in those patterns of symbols, that points to something beyond those religious stories.
Yeah.
It's like, those mysteries where the answer was right there all along, we just didn't see it.
Right. We could be looking for these super complex codes when the answer is something simple, something we've overlooked because we were looking too hard in the wrong place.
Exactly. I know, it's fascinating to me how this codex makes us re-examine, how we think about communication. Like, why go to all the trouble of creating a whole new language?
Right.
What was this person trying to achieve?
It really makes you wonder.
Was it all about secrecy? Or was there something, I don't know, something more to it than that?
A deeper meaning, maybe.
Yeah, a deeper meaning. It makes you think about all the different ways humans have tried to, I don't know, to express themselves, to leave their mark.
Yeah. From those cave paintings all the way to emojis and everything we do online today.
It's like we're always searching for new ways to encode information, to share it, to hide it.
The Codex Rohonczi, with its unique mix of text and these amazing illustrations, I think it reminds us that people have always been fascinated by secrets.
By hiding them, by
Yeah.
revealing them. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Codex Rohonczi. It's been a journey through history, language, and mystery itself.
It really has.
And it reminds us that even in today's world, where it seems like we have all the information at our fingertips, there are still mysteries out there, waiting to be discovered. Secrets waiting to be whispered.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to finally crack the code, so to speak, to shed new light on this puzzle.
It could happen. But until then, keep your minds open, stay curious, and keep diving deep.